This is one of the first YouTube live sessions that we've done at CareerFoundry. We've got a lot of people attending tonight. I think some people are probably still in the waiting room, so we'll just give them a couple of seconds just to tune in. I'll do a little introduction. I'm William, Communications Manager here at CareerFoundry, and this is an Ask Us Anything session within reason. I've been joined this evening with two senior designers, Dee and Jeff. Before we kick off though, I'd just like to introduce you to CareerFoundry. So we are an online education company and support network that helps anyone change their career into tech. So we provide training in UX design, UI design, web development, and data analytics. And we've now got a community of over 6,000 students, graduates, mentors, tutors, and career advisors, all there to help you. We train people from scratch, so there's no prior experience needed. You can enter the course without knowing anything beforehand, and we'll give you the tools to help you land your dream position in tech. Now, today, I'm super happy that we are joined by two very special guests. Firstly, we have Dee, who is an innovation coach, workshop designer, and facilitator. Dee has worked as a lead UX designer, design sprint master, and product strategy coach. So save your questions for Dee later. She has also consulted for companies such as Google, Twitter, Verizon Media, and Procter & Gamble. Jeff, on the other hand, is a UX and product design educator, and he is the co-founder of the Fountain Institute, which I would highly recommend that you check out. Which runs advanced UX courses. Jeff has definitely coached hundreds of designers, and you may have seen him popping up in some YouTube videos that we've done for CareerFoundry, because we used to work together at CareerFoundry too. So today we're inviting you to ask us anything about UX design, UI design, about our guest experience, and Dee and Jeff are gonna, to the best of their ability, share their insights on what this is. We do have some house rules though. If you have any questions for any of our speakers, please post them in the chat. If you do have any questions about our programs, please book a call with one of our program advisors. This session, we're going to be talking to designers and asking more about the industry and experiences in the industry. But if you've got any specific questions about one of our programs, please just book a call with one of our program advisors. So without further ado, I think it's best to start off with the presenters introducing themselves. So I'd like to pass it over to Dee first. Dee, could you just tell everybody out there who you are and also what your kind of background is?
Thanks, Will. It's really nice to be here, and you actually did a really great introduction. So let me try and think of what else to say. So I started in UX design, or getting into the design world, like 12 years ago, and I didn't study it. I kind of just forced my way in. I studied something else, and then I saw design stuff happening, and I was like, I want to go over there. But so I've started as a UX designer, or sometimes called a product designer as well, but really doing UX design work for most of my career. And then in the last few years, when I started doing more and more workshops and things like research and getting more really hands-on with practical methods and things like that, now I've worked my way into being this like innovation coach, workshop facilitator, now doing workshop design as well, helping people design custom workshops. But everything else you really said, like now I'm doing freelance consulting and with things like that, working with tons of different companies around the world, doing the stuff that I love. So
very cool.
Yeah, and maybe I'll pass over to Jeff.
Please do, yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I started design like over 10 years ago, doing graphic design in school actually. And then I pretty quickly got into tech startups, doing product design and then UX design. Actually, after that, worked at CareerFoundry for a while, still really line up with their mission and really enjoyed that work and doing design education since around 2016. And going from UX designer to founding a company actually, and really seeing a lot of parallels and really finding the skills that I learned as a UX/UI designer still really helpful. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to some people who are just now going through that journey.
Awesome. And we're so happy to have you both here this evening. I'm going to start off with a really basic question just to kick the discussion off. I don't know who wants to go first, Jeff or Dee, but my question would be, where did you first hear about UX design? Where did you first hear about it? And to Dee.
Yeah, I've got an answer ready. I don't know if you're looking like you're thinking of yours, Jeff. And it's not. I've got an answer ready. It was a momentous time in my life, and especially looking back, going, "Whoa! Imagine if I didn't do that or didn't see that." I was working. It was in my first job. I had been an intern, and then I got hired at this company. It was super traditional, boring, huge company. Everything was slow, but had done this internship, and then found my way into being a really junior product designer, it was called at the time. And most of the work I was doing was really just working with the tech people. But the thing I loved the most was when working in this company, we had to kind of go out and figure out what the problems were, go out into the world and see how people did things and how we could make their computer systems better. This is like 12 years ago now, before there were even like cool mobile apps and things. And that was the thing that I really loved, talking to people and going, oh, tell me about I didn't know you had that kind of, oh, wow, what we're building really doesn't help you. How can we help you? How can we design it better? And it was at that moment when I was thinking, oh, this is amazing, talking to people, understanding people's problems, figuring out creative solutions, that I remembered going to meetups and things as well, because I'd just been like, this design thing's cool. And I came across someone, or like we shared on LinkedIn or something, and her job title was user experience designer. And I was like, user experience designer? That was the first time I heard that term. I think about then, like 10, 12 years ago, it was really not well known and just been going for a few years. And I was like, user experience. That's what I like, the experience of people and understanding and solving problems. And I looked at her LinkedIn and looked at all the cool stuff she was doing. And I was like, that's me. I want to be that. And I really remember that moment so clearly. It was like, that's what I'm going to get to. That's what I'm going to do. And
that was like the eureka moment.
Really? Yeah. So clear for me. What about you, Jeff?
I don't feel like I had a eureka moment, but much like you, I was doing product design, and probably more on the UI side, right, at the moment. And this was like 2013, 2014. And I remember Valerie Gomez de la Torre, that's her name. I just looked it up to make sure I was saying that properly. Valerie was she was like a individual contributor, a really senior UX designer. And she ended up doing all the UX design stuff at the company, because it was like the information architecture and all that stuff. And I worked with a couple projects on her, and she was just a great teacher. And she brought me into like kind of what it felt like to do it. But I think probably was an InVision article or something. I was like reading a lot about UX design and trying to blog a lot. And I think that's when I first started really getting into it and being like, oh yeah, this functional side of things makes me feel like I could make more impact. And I think that was one of the first things that I was thinking.
Great answer, making impact. We love that. I've got a question, and this is, I think lots of the audience tonight will probably be thinking, okay, I'm thinking about UX design, but I'm just starting out. What would, for two experienced UX designers or people that have worked in the design industry, what would be your best tip for someone who's just starting out? And that's to Dee.
Okay. If it's this kind of, is it this kind of person who's like, oh, that looks cool, and I'm not sure if it's right for me, or is it someone who's already on the track?
I think the first answer, someone who's just kind of like, it looks cool, but try it. Why would I want to do this, or why would I want to break into this industry? Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. There's the why would I's, and then there's also the like things to be aware of that your life will be full of now, like full of people, full of working with people, not just sitting at your desk alone. So they can be sometimes positives and negatives, and you can, based on the person you are or how you like to work or how you like to be. But so the things that I feel like are the most exciting, attractive things that it's not really clear before you start working are things like that you'll get to move and be active in your job. Like you have to work with so many different teams or different types of people, depending on what kind of company you're in, but always you're never really working on your own. You're either doing user research stuff or going out or like talking to other people and learning about them, or you're really being this translator between business and the tech. Like sometimes there's the managers that are like, we need to make this product, and then the tech people are like, okay, let's make this product, and you're this in between who's saying like, maybe we need to ask questions before we go down this track, and then you're translating business goals and what your customers want, what your users want, to tech people to help them create the right thing. And so I remember like all this time working as a UX designer, I was sitting at my desk maybe 50% of the time. And the other times going and asking someone a question, oh, what are you working on? How does this work? Why is this a business goal? Or going out and doing research or testing with users. So I feel like that's the big thing for me, is that there's a lot of working with people, and I find that really motivating and really fun and really energizing, instead of just sitting and going, oh, I have to get this work done all by myself. Yeah. And
also making those connections between like kind of the product, but also the users, but also the teams that you're working with, different departments.
It's this real connector role. At least that's how I see it. You're really connecting the dots a lot between people and between goals and between agendas, and making sure that everything's fitting together for the right reason. And it's really fun to see all those, like all the pieces and how they all fit together and how you can help them work together better.
Awesome. And Jeff, you got any tips for the budding beginner?
Yeah, I feel like that everything Dee was saying also resonates with me. I think that was what I was drawn to it. I think a lot of times people have questions about, should I do UX or should I do UI? I think they're both can be connector roles, and I think a lot of times, UI leads into UX in the past. Now it doesn't have to necessarily. I think you can just kind of start in UX. But yeah, for me, I always wanted to be an architect. That was like my dream growing up, and I like to play Legos, and I was like, cool, like I want to build something or whatever, and make some impact with that, with how I build it. And I think what I found was UX design was the most architect-like role in digital design. Because yeah, you're like dealing with, the builders and the client and all these little kind of back and forth, and you're kind of, between, and maybe you don't have as much power as an architect, as a designer. Depends on what your team is, but you do connect. So I think for the budding UX designer, yeah, it's like, if you're really curious, you like learning about people, even if you don't like talking to people, like you can be an introvert, it's totally fine. But if you're connecting the people and the business and connecting the people and the goals and the product, like I think there's just like empathy and curiosity are really important for that. So I don't know, a lot of times I feel like people ask about what kind of person you need to be. I think every kind of person, right? But I think me and Dee also share some of these similarities of like what we enjoy about it. We can hear that in our answers. So yeah.
Can I add something quickly, Will?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, go for it.
I tapered off in my story and it didn't really answer your question. But the thing I wanted to say was about this, like you'll be working with people, you'll be doing this, is maybe the tip or the thing for the budding or new starting UX designer, is that you can be doing it already in every day of your life, in everything that you do. And this connecty thing, like the number of times that friends will come to me and say, I've got this great idea for an app. And then I they talk about it and then I'm like, oh, so what problems do people have? Or why is this, how many people have you talked to that say they have this problem? And they're like, oh no, it's just a cool idea. But you can, in your daily life, you can already start doing this. And if that's something that really excites you, is at the cafe where there's a long queue all the time, like ask the people, why is there a long queue all the time? What's going on? Oh, and find out what the problems are, then come up with ideas of how to make things better. So I think that would be my tip, is keep your eye out for that. UX is happening all the time, all around us, and you can be part of it in your everyday life, and that can help you really come into it as a career as well.
How can we hack all these little life problems which are happening around us? I'm going to jump straight into the questions from the audience because we've got lots of questions. The first question from YouTube is from Lindsay, and Lindsay has asked whether UX or UI design requires coding. Who would like to take that? Shall I give that to you, Jeff?
What is it, Jeff? Yeah.
None at all. Don't learn to code. You don't need to. I think this used to be an actual question like 5-10 years ago, where should designers code, because there weren't as many tools that allow you to not code. There's a thing called the no-code movement. You have tools like Webflow, you have tools like Notion and Super.so, where you don't need to know how to code at all. InVision kind of made that really kind of debunk when it came out, and even more so now. So don't learn to code. I don't think you need to. I think it's a different type of mindset to code. It's like it's like desirability is interesting for the designer. Like, is it desirable to users? The feasibility is what the developer thinks about. Like, can we build this? And I think it's good if you don't have to do both those things and have both those things at the same time.
Plus, learning to code takes a long time. I studied computer science. I did a computer science degree, and then I was like, "Ooh, design, UX looks cool," and I changed. And I didn't use I haven't written a single line of code in my UX life, even though I studied computer science. Yeah, so I 100% agree with Jeff. Unless you really like it and you really want to, and then cool, great, do it, but it's not necessary.
I think some people watching are probably breathing a sigh of relief after hearing that. One other question that's coming from YouTube, and apologies if I pronounce anybody's name wrong, I'll do my best, but from Bedon. What is an average salary for a UX or UI designer? I mean, lots of people are interested in the money side of it, and I suppose it is also based on geographical location, so it's a little bit tricky to ask, but I'll just throw that out there anyway, because it is Ask Anything. So Dee, would you like to answer that one first?
Well, yeah, it's really, I think you can Google like literally averages, but I think it's so broad. Like as an example, should I say what I was actually earning in my first UX job? So, this is actually a good one. In Australia, my first role as a junior designer, I was earning something like 60,000 Australian dollars a year, because Australia is expensive and rich and there's money. And as a baby junior designer, I was already earning that. And then I moved to Berlin. And then in my first job here, it halved. I was suddenly earning half the amount, even though I was more experienced. So the salary ranges can really go like double, triple. And yeah, so it's maybe that's a super unsatisfying answer. But if you really want the average, like if you would go to San Francisco, you could be earning 200K as a mid-level UX designer in the right company. But yeah, I really think it's the geographical part of that is, and the type of company. If you want to get more money, work in a company that has more money.
In tech.
And if you want to work in a cool startup that's doing something really cool, the salary is probably for sure going to be half or a third of what you get in a big company. Do you have any more satisfying answer, Jeff?
Maybe if we can get away from the geographic location, I can talk about like the quality of life. Like it's good enough, I feel like I could pay for meals and not think about it when I was doing design, even as a mid-level, maybe not as a junior. But Glassdoor is pretty good about this. I think Glassdoor will give you, and CareerFoundry has a lot of blog posts about this as well. I'm pretty sure it will, right? Like there's several actually.
CareerFoundry has got an awesome blog. So if anybody wants to check that out, feel happy to do that. Yep.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Jeff. The comfort, the life comfort level.
It's good, right? I mean, it's not like you're starving, It's like especially in tech. I think it's going to be much better in tech. The bigger the company, the more financial related, the better it's going to be. But even small companies, like it's going to be above the median, starting salary for things.
Much more satisfying answer.
I get to think while you're talking, Dee.
Also, I should just say one thing, Dee. That salary in Berlin, that was maybe a while ago, hey, when you first started out.
Oh, that's true.
So it's also changed. It'll be a little bit different now.
That's actually very true. That was 8 years ago already, and Berlin has really changed actually in these 8 years. Really a lot. Yeah, that's a good point. And now I'm still working in Berlin, and I'm definitely earning a different salary now. The more it's a good field, because the more senior you get, really the more desirable you are. So it's that you're super comfortable as soon as you start and get your first job, you're already at that cool. I got a salary that lets me have a comfortable life and buy meals and not think about the cost. And then it's only up from there, and then you really are more and more sought after the more expert you get at the role.
I've got another question coming in here from YouTube. How long does it take for a student to learn UI or UX design from scratch and then be industry ready to land in that first job? I'll give that one to Jeff to start off with.
I mean, I think it depends on if you're doing a boot camp or a degree, or you're just maybe learning on the job. So I think learning on the job takes the longest. I think the degree, well, what is it like normally? Like probably 2 years of your major, you're going to be majoring in this. It depends. And then with a boot camp, you're spending the same amount of time. You're just doing it more intensely. I think CareerFoundry is like 9-10 months, something like that, which is about the same as a 2-year bachelor degree. I think you really do need that much time. Maybe you're lucky and you've already doing some sort of work that's similar. Like maybe you're doing marketing content and you start to get in Photoshop and you start to kind of experiment. But like industry ready UX/UI designer, I think for those of us who've been in the industry, like it's good that there is a certain level, right? And I think that sometimes people try and make it seem it's super easy. You just need to learn Figma and you're in. And I think it's not that simple. So I'd say at least a year learning hardcore and probably you're ready for industry, but that really depends on a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And also the only thing I would add to that, because that was a perfect answer, is that you can also sometimes get your foot into that first job. If it's like really being industry ready, maybe which is a different way of describing it. But then there's you might find a startup that's really like, come work for us, like maybe as an intern or something like that. Because we don't have much money, but you can get experience here. But we really just need someone who knows something, how to do wireframes, how to talk to users, and then you can get that slightly earlier entry point by just looking for the right place. And you might be getting paid way like a intern salary, but getting your foot in and being industry ready just from maybe even doing it.
Yeah, you went that route a little bit, right? Do you kind of like just got in the door and tried this and that, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But I was lucky, which is also a real possibility actually for people who are wanting to get into it. In the job that I already had, there was a design team over there, and I was a kind of intern, and I was kind of allowed to. And even if I wasn't allowed to, I could have like tried to push it. I was like, I want to go join that team, or can I spend 3 months on that team and just see what I can see if I like it, see what I can contribute there. So there's often ways that in the job that you have, if it's that kind of company that would have a UX team or design team, you might be able to get your start there without having to,
Yeah, it's also kind of weird in design because it's not like you're a lawyer and you have to pass the bar. There's not like a certification test. And like Dee was saying, startups might just go like, we need somebody to do this, and you jump in and you do it. But then you're still going to be learning a lot in order to take the next job as the official designer. And some people, they want all the certifications and all of the training to make them feel better and confident. And some people are just like, I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to do it. So it definitely depends. I think at startups, they're probably a little bit more willing to let you learn on the job for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say we do have one student, Maureen, who's now a graduate, and I think she was on the program for maybe 5 or 6 months before she even finished the program. She landed a job in the industry. So there are some students who go through the program super quickly, and then some people who take a little bit longer. That's also fine. Another question I've got coming through from YouTube from Celine is, I think it kind of like tacks onto the stuff that we were talking about before, but do you need some sort of college degree to land a job, or is bootcamp training enough, or?
We're just like both shaking.
Everyone's shaking their heads.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember actually what your story is, Jeff, but I'm like, I don't have a degree in design. This is like just proof immediately right here, but just absolutely not. Like the same with programming, the same with lots of things. But this especially, it's like, especially when there's so many great courses out there, so many great resources out there. And if you can get a start, or like at a small startup or something like that, and start a boot. I remember so many stories like that as well, of people doing the CareerFoundry course and then getting a job halfway through, and then having this dilemma about wanting to finish the course and still doing a job. It's like, take the job, man. Try and finish the course slowly. Yeah. But it's definitely not like, you definitely don't need a degree to get into this.
Yeah, I feel like in design, it's so much more important where you've worked, which can cause anxiety because it's hard to get that first job. And I know I feel that struggle. But it's because all the innovations in design are happening on the job. Like, it's changing too quickly for universities. That's why companies like CareerFoundry exist. Like, when I was going to school, UX design wasn't a thing at all. I mean, I think it was in some schools, maybe at Carnegie Mellon, maybe the human computer interaction or something like that. But even now you look at those programs and they're kind of out of date. Like, we have product analytics. We don't need to be doing tons of usability audits anymore, but they're still teaching those things. So like, I think things like boot camps, CareerFoundry, and things like that, you can start to keep up with the things that are changing in design, and it changes so fast. But people are going to be more impressed if you worked at Twitter than if you went to Harvard. That's just kind of design work.
And unless you live in a country where tertiary education is free, it's tertiary, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. With like Finland, I think even Germany.
Sure.
Oh yeah, high five. Then unless you live in a country where it's free, I feel like that it's a no-brainer. Like if you have to pay tens of thousands or more to do a degree, then it's absolute no-brainer. Like you don't need it. But it's not to say you can't get a lot from a degree. Learning other things, human computer interaction, or there's entrepreneurship courses that have UX stuff in them as well. Then you maybe get some other skills, but really, firm opinion on that one.
And also just picking up on what Jeff was saying earlier, I mean, at CareerFoundry, we've got a fantastic curriculum team who are constantly updating the course material because the industry changes so fast that, you know, a month, 6 months later, we also need to update everything that we're offering to make sure that we're sending out designers or web developers with the latest knowledge. So that's one important point to mention. I've got a question from Tim, and Tim is asking, for someone starting out, is it beneficial to focus more first on UX design or UI design? Is there one that comes before the other, or Dee, would you like to answer this first?
So there's first, if you're really more interested and enjoy and are drawn to one, I feel like that's a really good thing to listen to. Because if you try and force yourself to start with something that's not really as interesting, you might lose interest. So I feel like that's the first thing for me, is which one do you like the most? And then to really answer your question, in terms of doing a project, UX design kind of comes before UI design. Like first you do some research, and then you do some wireframe sketches and testing ideas and make some prototypes, and then you really fully design the UI. So in terms of that, but you shouldn't, it's not like you can't work as a UI designer unless you've done UX already. That's not really how it goes. There'll be teams where it's got UX designers over here and UX designers there, and they do like separate things and they work closely together, but it's not like all the UI designers were all UX designers before. Is that, what about you, Jeff?
I mean, I think this is changing too, like that you sometimes you definitely need a little bit of both. Like I'm a generalist. I did UI before I learned UI before I learned UX, because you kind of had to back in the day just to get your foot in the door. Sometimes it used to be easier to get a UI job than a UX job. And then they would save the UX jobs for the more senior people because it was like, you need to know more about the product and stuff. But that's changed. And so I feel like, what he's saying, like if you're drawn to one and you're more excited, like you'll get good at the thing you like doing. So start with the thing that you like doing. Eventually you'll probably learn a little bit of both. You'll probably build some UI knowledge and some UX. You don't have to anymore either. But like my path was like, I tried a little graphic design, then I was like, oh, I want digital. So then I was like visual design. Then I was like, oh, product design, UI design, and then UX design. And then I'm thinking about, business design and blah, blah, blah. Like you just kind of keep building specialties, not specialties, but building different parts of your skill set and stay general. That's kind of how I've done it. But I worked at small companies. If you work at a big company, you might be like a UI designer only and not do UX. So that also might be a possibility. So it really just depends. And I don't think that you should be too stressed about making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different corridors that kind of go off from UX design and UI design. I know one of our authors here at CareerFoundry, Emily, wrote a fantastic article recently about the kind of like the umbrella of all the different kind of like jobs that kind of like spin off from UX and UI design. And it was really like, wow, there's so much going on. I've got another great question here from Sadia. What is the best creative software to use for design? Now, this is probably a little bit of a controversial one. I think you're going to either fall on, I don't know which way this is going to go, but what is the industry standard? I've heard it's Figma, but I quite like Adobe XD. Dee?
I've just been using Adobe XD for the first time in the last few months, and it is great, but this is all, I think it's really personal preference and opinion. Like I really love Figma because it just feels really easy, and I can just go like, oh, I need to mock something up. I need to do this. Boop, 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 boop. That's how I design. Boop, boop, boop. And Adobe XD felt a bit clunkier and I had to get used to it. But to be honest, and also that question, I'm guessing it's maybe a little more focused on UI design-ish, but you can still do what? Yeah, I honestly, I just don't know the answer.
Do you think it's a deal breaker? Do you think like if you're going to an employer and you're saying, okay, I'm really good at Adobe XD, but I don't know Sketch or I don't know Figma. No. Do you think they're going to be like, no?
You just learn. I had never used Adobe XD, and then I was working with a client who was like, oh, we use Adobe XD. And I was like, okay, I would download Adobe XD. You just start using it and like, oh, I have to figure out where this is, like where the button is. Or I think there's no design tools now that you can't just pick up really fast. So that's almost like leveled the playing field, and it comes down to personal preference, or what if you need to design something and then make it into a testable prototype, then maybe there's tools that are better with that. Like Adobe XD is great with that. You can click a button and then make it into a prototype. So there's, with the specifics, there are better tools, but I don't think there's like the best design tool ever. What things do you use, Jeff? What do you like?
It's all Figma these days, but like that changes. Like we use Sketch. Every time a new tool comes out, it's amazing. But if you squint, they all look the same now. Like Adobe XD, they all look the same. They all do prototyping now. They all do a little bit of motion. They're all super easy to do design systems. So like those three, they're all good. And maybe your employer uses Sketch and you're used to Figma. You'd probably pick it up in a week. It's not a big deal. I'd probably go for Figma first because their free trial is amazing. So you can start there for free. And actually, I think more people use Figma now. But like, I think this question is kind of an old school question. It's left over from when Photoshop was really hard to use. And people were like, I can use Photoshop. And employers were like, great, let's hire them. Now it's like, I think they're easier to use, as Dee said. Like,
that's a really good point. I remember it was being years and I was learning Photoshop and Illustrator, Adobe products. And 3 years later, I was like, that's how you do that thing with it. Like, really still learning after 3 years of using a product all the time. And that's a really good point, Jeff. It's all just changed. Everything's flipped. Yeah, because companies know that making their product easier to use gets more people to use it. So all the products are really, really easy to use now. You can even tell someone in an interview, we use Adobe XD here. Do you use that? And you're like, yeah, great. And then you go home and you just get it and you figure it out. Yeah.
I remember like in my graphic design university, all we learned was Illustrator. We didn't even learn Photoshop, like that was a different time,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also did I think it was about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I did the intro to UI design course, and I was using Sketch to make this travel app. And, I was also completely new to these design tools, but I also felt there's lots of crossover, if you've had like a play around with like Photoshop or Lightroom, there's like little things that you kind of learn, and they all kind of like, there is definitely some transferable skills that you can take across. I mean, if you've worked with computers before, I mean, you can definitely take that across and kind of use that to your advantage. I've got lots more questions. There's questions going through, just endless questions. But this one question from Anna, I think this is a good question, is do you feel like these careers are a good mix of design, creativity, and analytics? So I suppose like for a generalist and you want to do lots of different things, do you think it's good for design, creativity, and analytics?
As in, is the UX design career good for?
I think so.
Should I go, Jeff? I don't know if I've like 100% am answering, like understanding the question, but I feel like it's definitely a career, a field where you can make it what you want it to be. So you could be a UX designer. I went for an interview at a company years ago, and they were hiring a UX designer. And then when I went there to the interview, I realized it was really doing analytics, like really just using data and really making, I don't even remember how to say this, like decisions based on numbers and data and metrics and things like that. And I was like, no, I like sketching things on paper. But that's the wide difference that you can have. And you can then choose like, no, I don't think I want to work in that kind of company who's doing that kind of thing. I think I want to work in a company that does more workshops or more, So maybe the answer is yes. And you can, but to add to it, you can really then choose the bits that you like and try and focus your career on the things that make you the happiest, the most motivated in your work.
What was the question again, Will?
Yeah, can you read that again?
Anna was asking, I think Anna said, I definitely have a more of an analytical mindset, but not sure if I only want to crunch numbers all day, because I think Anna would also like to work with people in a team. So do you feel like this career kind of combines design, creativity, and analytics?
Yes. Right. That's much better context, because maybe that story that I just told really answered that then, because I'm exactly like you, I think, Anna. And I've hardly ever worked with the number side of things, the like analytics and the data, but then occasionally there'll be some things like, oh, look at these numbers, and okay, cool, we'll work that in. But I just chose the path of the people, the users, the research, the testing, the sketching, the workshops.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are drawn to the qualitative data side of things too. Like I think UX design classically is really strong in that, like in-depth interviews, watching people do user tests and things like that. But now we have a lot of really accessible quantitative tools as well. So I'm starting to see a lot of designers upskill in data analytics and being like quantitative researchers in a way. Like I think you should do qual and quant research. I think those are super important. Maybe like quant to start the project, a lot of qual, and then some quant at the very end to measure. Like this is quite common, I think. So if you've got that analytic mindset, that's kind of a power that a lot of designers are trying to build right now.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think designers are spreadsheet people. I think we're more like whiteboard people. So that might be my opinion only. But yeah, I think that's maybe slowly changing. But I think the qualitative sketchers, communicators, translator thing that we've been talking about is kind of the current dynamic. But maybe that'll even change by the time you get into the field, or you're already in the field and you can change it.
Mm-hmm. A whiteboard, a marker, and some post-it notes. They are the tools.
Yes.
We've got quite a few questions coming in about portfolios. Now, we've got one from Barb. What looks amateur, outdated, or simply unimpressive when you look at a UX or UI design portfolio? Dee, I know you're looking.
Also, there's some great videos coming out soon in the CareerFoundry channel that are it's an amazing presenter that's doing a breakdown of 8, I think 2 videos really breaking down, looking at people's portfolios and commenting on them, and like, yeah, they're going to be great. But the thing that really stands out for me is when I can see that this portfolio has not been designed, I guess, or thought out to fit this job. I'm like, I'm hiring for this job. I need a UX designer who's going to run workshops or make sketches or blah, blah, blah. And then I get a portfolio that's got UI design of app screens on it. I'm like, okay, like next, straight away. I'm not going to dig through a portfolio to try and find out if this person has done any workshops. It needs to be on the front page. So if you've got a portfolio, if you've done the course and you've got a portfolio, or if you're working as a designer already, you should have a different portfolio, unless you're really applying for really all the same types of jobs really specifically. Your portfolio should be just slightly tweaked at least for every job. If you want to get that job, you got to use the words that they use, show them that you can do what they're asking for. That's the biggest standout for me. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is at all. You might be like, wow, this is beautiful. Let me look. Oh, that's irrelevant. Yeah.
That's really good advice. Yeah.
The question was, are there things we see that we get turned off by on portfolios, kind of?
I think, do you want to read
yeah, something which looks like amateur or outdated, or maybe just doesn't look as impressive.
I mean, I think the first thing is if it's not on a website, if it's not on the web, which is where we all work, it doesn't look good. Like I think PDFs can feel a little bit outdated unless you're not allowed to share and maybe you're in person interview, then PDF's perfect. Yeah, I think a lot of times I think about the frame of the portfolio. Like the frame is the first thing I see. Like, is it, even a little bit of visual design, because I'm a visual designer in school, so I do get kind of drawn into that. And I think a lot of design managers do. It's unfortunate that it has to kind of look decent, but keep it minimal. Don't worry about that too much. Just like needs to look like you need to think about the right typography, and also make sure that your website works. Like make sure that your menu makes sense, and make sure that these things. When I see glaring mistakes that are like website design, it makes me think that you're not ready for UX UI design. So that's one thing that I feel like can feel a little bit outdated. But I'm really a big fan of like storytelling being in the website. Kind of what Dee was saying, like it needs to show you and talk about you. To me, that's more important. Like on my portfolio, for the longest time, I've had like an empty state on my portfolio, and it says like UX designers need stories, not portfolios. Like I think portfolios are kind of unfortunate that we have to do. Like they just get you in the door, they get you that interview. That's all they do. So just make sure there's not like glaring mistakes, and make sure you talk about yourself well. I think that's the important thing.
I want to add that in as well. If you've got great stuff like, oh, look at this product we built, look at this user research we did, but you're not telling the story of how you did it, how you decided to design something this way, how you decided to do the user research, telling the story of it. That's also like, I'm looking at your portfolio to try and hire you, and I don't know how you work because you haven't told me. I don't know how you did this. I don't need your design on the page. I need to know that you'll be able to work here and work well with this team. Yeah.
UI designers don't have to have as much storytelling, I would say. Like visual designers as well. But I think, me and Dee are like more UX side of things. So that's kind of
that's a really good point. Yeah.
I think that's really great advice, especially for like budding UX designers. And I think like it's human nature to kind of tune into like stories. I think we're just kind of, we like to know how things happen, but also in the kind of order, and we like to put the jigsaw together. So I think that's fantastic advice. I've got another portfolio related question from Crystal. Crystal is asking, Crystal has 10 years of experience as a graphic designer. And Crystal is asking, what kind of projects should I showcase in my portfolio when I start to move into the field of UX design?
I mean, I can talk about what I did in my first job interview that I think was kind of a lucky thing that happened. But like I had a bunch of graphic design work. I had posters from my friends' bands, and I had like one website design. Like I put it, like the frame again, like I put it on an iPad app that had some interactions. And so when I interviewed, my boss gave me a shot. I was like, oh, well, I can see you can do typography and stuff, but the fact that you put it in this portfolio app, or maybe a website, it shows that you're thinking about interactions and things like that. So if you can show the functionality and the thinking behind what you're designing, even if it's graphic design, I think this is helpful. So like I used to do like these PDFs for work, and I would put them in an iPad and I turned it into a GIF so that it was moving, like just something to make it look a little more interactive and digital and online, because it's really about the interaction and the functionality. And maybe you can pull some of that out of your graphic design work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if I forgot the name of this person, I'm sorry, but if you've done a course or you've got anything to show at all, I think maybe I want to know what you think about this, Jeff, but I think that a mistake that some people make is like, I've got all this graphic design experience and I've just done these 2 projects in my course, and so I'm going to put the 2 projects there and then have 8 projects of graphic design. And I feel like, but maybe this is just a personal, this is my preference, that sometimes you need to put less of the stuff that you don't want to be doing. So maybe to put your 2 best graphic design things there as well, or the graphic design things that really involved people in some way. Like, oh, I did this graphic design of this poster for this exhibition, and so I had to really understand about the exhibition, and I walked through the museum, so something that makes it really like I designed this with users in mind. Put those cases in and leave out the things that are, this is something people don't do, leave out the stuff that's not selling you for that job, because it'll just dilute things and be like, oh, this person looks more like a graphic designer because they've got 8 things of graphic design and 2 things of UX. But if you put 2 of each, they just won't have that thought, and they won't think, oh, it's amazing. You're deciding what you're making people think by putting it in your portfolio. Yeah.
I did this, and it's so painful to take out the stuff you've worked so hard on. But it's like a news story. You have to put the most important thing here, and the second most important thing here, and the third most important thing here. So think about what that most important thing is. It's such good advice.
Moving on, we've got a question from Stephen, and this is kind of like about experience, I suppose. So how do you find a job as a UX designer with no experience, and how long does it take to get a job with no experience? I suppose for somebody who's just starting out, wondering how am I going to break into this industry? Yeah.
Well, if you have a career advisor from CareerFoundry, then you already have a head start. Yeah. Did you have something? It looks like you had an answer there, Jeff. No.
I mean, I think that sometimes this question, like, if I were to say, what would it take me to get a job in engineering without any education and without any experience? It will be a lot of work, right? I think it's a little easier in design, right? I think it's really, you need to maybe do some, I don't know if you've already done some education, so I don't want to assume you have. I'm assuming you've done some thinking and reading about it, whatever. But I think just learn as much as you can and connect with as many people as possible who are doing it, and then maybe start to build your network and then get into the experience. Because I think the network is probably the most important thing. I don't know.
Yeah. There are, at least in Berlin, there are these short internships. It's a thing, so it can be that are really really low paid, but still, like if you're going to pay to do a course or pay to do something, you might as well get low pay to learn, because then you're actually getting something. So there can be these ways of getting in a bit quicker, but then there's also competition for those. So I would say if it's really zero experience, how long does it take to get a job? I think it takes at least some months, like to do a boot camp or to do some free courses online or teach yourself, or ask someone if you can come and, like, if you know someone who's doing that role, who's a UX designer, can I come and spend a week at your work and help you with tasks for free? That would be a great way to just start to get in. Like, I know, then you start to know how things work, how UX designers work, what they do every day, and then maybe you can have something to show. And I think it's also great to, even if you haven't done a course or anything, to do a project. Like, look at other people's portfolios and see the kind of work that they do, and then go do a project for a friend, and just do the design, like do the wireframes, do the designs, do the research, and show that in a book. It's real work. It's real work still. So I think I would say like 6 months-ish is like to really learn something and get it into practice is maybe that, yeah.
I think also from my experience of working with students and also being at CareerFoundry is a lot of people think when they're breaking into a new industry that you're breaking into that industry with no previous experience. There's actually lots of soft skills and lots of transferable skills before you start learning those hard design skills that you're already bringing to that first job interview. So, and also at CareerFoundry, we offer fantastic support. We've got a job preparation course, some interview mock-ups, all kinds of things. And yeah, I mean, we've had so many different alumni who've gone from like marketing to UX design, or you know, teachers to UI design. It's really been
nursing. I was thinking of one now that Jeff and I both worked with, who's a nurse and went for years and went to UX design, and that was a real selling point. It's like, oh, that already, my mum was a nurse as well. So I was like, okay, this already means you are really great with people, you really care, you understand, you need to understand people's needs, and you're good at figuring that out, and help. Yeah, that was already like, great. We don't have to teach this whole empathy, understanding, problem solving thing. She's already got that from years of experience. Yeah, other experience. That's a really great point, Will.
So moving on to a different question. This is a little bit more of a kind of like UX focus from YouTube. Is what is your favorite process while you are working on a UX design project? I'll ask Jeff that to start off with.
I think I'm kind of obsessed with the double diamond the past 5-6 years. I love the double diamond. I use that. It's more of a communication and a teaching tool for me. Like, I don't necessarily think you should be following processes like a recipe. I just wrote a really long article about this actually, because I think that's maybe a misunderstanding that a lot of people will have, is that design is a recipe you can follow. It's not like reading the back of the macaroni and cheese box. You know, that doesn't make you a chef, right? Like, you still have to learn the complications and the difficulty of knife work and how to, like, you know, put stuff in the oven and pull it out at the right time. There's lots of different changing things. But design processes are a really great start. I think if you're just starting out, probably design thinking would be a good one to check out. But yeah, double diamond to me is something I still use, you know, over a decade in. And this comes from mostly like service design world, also product design. So it's maybe a little bit more advanced if you're just starting. I know Dee, like actually at the Jam, was one of the first times I used double diamond. Dee was organizing this event, the Jam Berlin. And after that, I was just like, I saw it everywhere also. So you're going to start seeing the double diamond everywhere. Be prepared. But yeah, that's mine.
If someone's putting a link in the chat somewhere to what that is, if people haven't seen it, it's going to change your life. Me too. It's like, oh, I think I understand now all these things that I was doing and how and why they're in that order and why I was doing them. But I was thinking, I think I misunderstood, or I'm not sure if I did, because I was thinking about processes like processes for user research or processes for testing or something like that. But maybe I misunderstood that question. But I think
we could take it that way too. I think
that way anyway. Yeah. Yep. I think at the moment, my favorite, the thing that really excites me, and also excites me because a lot of people forget to do it, and now I'm working with different clients, and this is always the thing that they just don't bother doing, is testing ideas quickly. So you've got all the research and understanding users and sketching and mock-ups and wireframes and all this kind of stuff. But then often people leave it there and don't work out how to do a quick prototype and put it in front of a user the next day and get feedback. And that's my real passion at the moment, is shaking people and saying, do testing. You can do stuff in a day, like make a quick prototype. And it's also fun because you like hack together something really fast. And so you can kind of be practicing your design skills, but in a fun, fast way that you don't like lower commitment and stress and pressure. Yeah.
What is that saying? It's like a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard that one. That's amazing.
So helpful.
Yeah.
I'm going back to, because we've got questions coming from YouTube and also Big Market, so I'm going back to Big Market now. Questions coming from all angles. Maria is asking, what is the biggest challenge and frustration that you face as a UX designer? So just candid answer, what is the biggest challenge or frustration? When does you really go, oh, this is really annoying me?
I mean, that's easy. It's you. Once you start your career, you realize that for the rest of your career, you're going to explain what you do to everybody else.
Yes.
So the biggest challenge, frustration, is the low design maturity. Like, so even though you have a high design maturity, when you start working, the rest of the company does not. They have very low design maturity. So you're gonna have to explain it. You're gonna have to communicate, present, talk about what you do. Probably once a month, do a lunch and learn and talk about what your role is and how you do it and what's new about it. It's gonna be a constant uphill battle, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Like so many years, and it's still, yeah. So what do you do? Oh God. Here we go. Okay, how do I say it today? And yeah, and I don't know. I really don't know why. Hopefully, the world gets there one day where everyone understands this way of thinking. And yeah, the most frustrating thing I was going to say is really related. I think is being in an organization that really doesn't understand or doesn't. It's like, why are you spending 3 weeks doing research? Just design the thing. Working in organizations that don't support the work that you need to do, and really being super frustrated. But really, at first, I really wanted to like educate and get the organization to change and really bring people in and show them how useful this work is. But at some points, I was really like, actually, I think I need to make a different decision right now and change to a different company. That can be a really frustrating thing when you go every day into a place or into a screen in a company that doesn't really value, or you just end up really wanting to do good work and then being kind of a bit held back by the business processes that seem to take over and things like that. It's
like they're always pushing you to deliver, and you need to discover before you can deliver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a really good question, I think, because there are UX design is awesome, UX and UI. This world is awesome, but it doesn't mean that every single job that you have will be fun and awesome, and you'll get to do all the things that you want to do. And so you're really thinking carefully and looking in. And even if you get a job and 6 months in, you're like, oh no, that's happening. Just now you've got experience. Like maybe move, be happier somewhere else. Like look around at what's out there. There's lots and lots and lots of jobs because it's getting really, really big now.
I think that's also great advice, because we've had some graduates who've, started off maybe as a junior or a mid-level, and they've started off as a UX designer, but then they've really carved out their career. And also some of our graduates have also built their brands online, and then they go into roles which are so much different to what they did as when they started out. But 2 years down the line, you're kind of thinking, wow, like that's really such a cool like career progression. So another question that's come through Big Market, and I suppose it kind of links on a little bit, is, but how much mobility is there? So for say, like if I was trained in the US, could I land a junior job or a mid-level job in another country? Is that possible?
Yes. Is that your answer too, Jeff? Like, yeah. 100%. It's actually one of the most amazing. I feel so lucky that I was like, oh, that looks cool. I want to be a UX designer. I feel so lucky. I'm Australian, Jess from the US. We both live in Berlin. I've worked in the UK, in Brazil, maybe that's the end of the list. In Germany, obviously, in Italy, all these countries where English isn't the so there's language. So maybe that wasn't it. There's no like standard. Like if you're a lawyer or a doctor and you have to go, if you move to a new country, you have to get reaccredited or something. There's none of that at all. They're the most free you could ever be, I think. Am I overselling it? Is that
was it the weather in Germany that made you move the most? What was was that the kind of like the
No. I missed the sun. But no, it's great. But yeah.
I was laughing.
Yeah, go, Jeff.
I was laughing because me and Dee both did this, right? We both moved from different places. I think somebody told me that you had to be a senior before you could move abroad, and so I waited, but I could have done it before. I don't know what someone told me that. But yeah, like I think with all the remote positions now, like it'd be super easy to get a remote job and then just transition to in-person wherever it is. You know, like it's an amazing time to be mobile, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got kind of a follow-up question to this, is that if you're just starting out or trying to land that first job, what's the best company to kind of work for? Is it a big corporation? Is it a mid company, or is it a startup, or is it an agency? Because there's lots of different experiences there that you could potentially have. So what's the best?
I love this question. I feel like I've heard this question many times before because it's an important one and a common one. Okay, maybe I need to think actually, I don't know if you have an answer, Jeff. I don't know that there's a best, but I think you should move. Like maybe working in a bigger company is good because you have a lot of support. As in, if you're going to be going into a 12-person design team when you're doing your first job, that's great. You have more senior people than you. They'll have time to work with you and help and like teach you things. If you went into a startup in your first job, which is still fun, like still do it also because that can be your entry point because they maybe have a lower salary and they really need someone and junior is okay. But you also it might be a smaller team and more pressure and more rush and things like that. And that's also great experience actually to get it thrown into that, like, oh, we're doing stuff. But I think the agency is not actually, no, maybe that's not true. Maybe an agency, I don't know.
Yeah, do you do agencies at first, right? You started in agencies?
I started in-house in a big company, so maybe that's why I'm thinking that. But then I got really frustrated by the old slow processes. And then I went to another in-house company. And then I was like, no, and then I went agency, and then I went startup, and then I went agency again, and then freelance. Yeah.
I was going to say, like what you said about having a mentor, I think that's super important. If you can't control this usually, like you probably have to say yes to the job, that might be the case. But if you can find somebody who's more senior that you can learn from, that's way more important than whether it's big or small. Like I think that direct report, if your manager knows design better than you do, it's going to be so helpful.
Yeah.
But I did the small thing. I went to small startups. I liked it. I could try a lot of different hats. I would make a T-shirt for the CEO one day, and then I'd make a dashboard for the product team. Like I liked that at first. That was really nice, and I think I learned a lot by doing that way. But I got lucky and also had support from a senior. So like for me, that was perfect. That I got lucky and had a senior mentor, and it was a small company. I could try a lot of different things. But I mean, I'm kind of biased towards that generalist approach. I've never worked at a huge company, but I have noticed that a lot of those job ads maybe require like degrees in design and are a little bit more picky about who they choose. And it might be based on, do you know someone at that company, and you got to go through a lot of hoops. So for me, I like just jumping in there and solving big problems immediately at the startup.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really personal, and maybe there's no answer, but you have to think about if you feel more comfortable knowing that it's more people to support you, or if you want to be thrown in and have fun. Yeah.
Dee, I've got a question for you, and this is called Ask Us Anything. So we are getting some technical questions coming through. So this is a little bit more of a technical question. How different and difficult is enterprise software design? For example, designing a software for a space mission parameter control application, and what's the approach?
For example, like hypothetically, is this really what you're designing? That's huge. Like, so designing something, I'm guessing, like for this spaceship thing, that would be a years-long project. I'm guessing because I haven't designed any space things for NASA. But the differences there are probably the detail, the length of time, like spending months of research or months doing lots of design iterations, rather than a few weeks, like doing some quick research, making some prototypes, testing them with people like you would maybe in a startup. So I don't know. That's a really big question. We could probably talk an hour just about that question. But I don't know where the question is actually coming from. Is there a decision that needs to be made? Like, should I take this job or not? But basically, for me, I really don't like these big enterprise design projects where there's something really big being built or something. Yeah. Because I just get bored easily by doing the same thing for a while. And I want a 3-month project rather than a 3-year project. But that wasn't really the question. But was there any other context there, Will?
No further context on that one. I just assume maybe we've got some people watching from NASA who just want to field some new questions.
That was specifically for me? Was that person?
That one was, yeah, that one.
Why? I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I haven't designed anything for NASA or done, like, yeah.
Maybe this is an interview. We don't know.
Yeah. Like, I already botched it then because I was like, I wouldn't want to do that. But it's true. Yeah.
What is the highest position you might land if you plan to professionally do a UX design course? Jeff, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on if your background is already in design. Like, I don't think you should reset your clock when you go from visual design to UX design. Like, you build on top of that. You're learning a lot of theory in university or in your boot camp about like alignment and, you know, balance and a lot of things that are super helpful in UX design as well. So don't reset your clock. And if that means that you can jump to a senior UX position after doing mid-level graphic design, yeah, I think that's quite possible. It really depends on your experience. And like, yeah, we were talking about the soft skills earlier. In other fields, the soft skills are super helpful. Like if you've been presenting and facilitating, that's going to get you so far in design. You know, even data analytics is going to make you be able to measure your designs better than other designers. So yeah, you could maybe jump up. So I wouldn't say probably above senior, but yeah, you could probably jump to mid or senior if you've had some relevant experience.
Yeah, and I think if it's also about how far up can you go, I feel like those skills, like those soft skills, and those that thinking about what you're designing and who you're designing it for, it's almost like businessy skills as well. That kind of knowledge of how things work and how you can make them work better, and how you can, like this. I've met CEOs of big companies that were started as UX designers because those kind of skills are so good for
UX research. Like the problem space is so important for founding a company. And if
you
know how to research, then you're not just going off your own idea. Like Dee was talking about earlier, like I have an idea for an app. Is it anybody else's problem? Well, UX designers have a whole set of skills to figure that out, you know? So I think there is no ceiling for that. Like, I mean, I hope one day there'll be like a ministry of design, you know, even in politics. Like, I think that there's pretty a high ladder you can go with these.
Yeah, you can go into coaching and strategy work, and it's all based on this like understanding all the moving pieces of value and needs and motivations and designing things that solve problems. Yeah.
Those roles don't even exist yet. So like they're continuing to be built, you know?
We have another question here that some design fields, such as architecture, have a reputation of having a high level of self-sacrifice. So lots of time gets put in, but there's poor salaries, there's a bad life-work balance. How does UX really compare to that?
I think it depends on the company. I don't know what you were going to say, Jeff.
Yeah.
You definitely, that's not the given. I don't know if architecture or like lawyers and things like that, that's like, no, that's going to be your life now, no matter where you go. It's definitely not that, but it depends on the company. Because you might have a company that's just like got hard deadlines and targets and metric thingies you have to meet. Yeah, so just watch out for that, and you might find yourself in a company like that and just watch and go, okay, that's that thing. I'm gonna move somewhere else. Or if you can see it from the outside, maybe don't even apply for a job. Maybe you can apply for jobs.
Yeah.
We're not to apply for jobs, but yeah, watch out for it.
Yeah, that's like just being obsessive with outputs instead of outcomes with regards to the customer is a real red flag that you're going to be working yourself too hard. I've also seen some agencies tend to push a little harder because of their business model, and they charge by the hour, so they can sometimes force you to work more hours, but you get a lot of cool clients on your portfolio, you learn really fast. So I think it kind of depends there.
That's a good watch out for agencies. All the agencies I've worked in have been amazing, really, really cool. But I've got friends who work in like bigger agencies with that, like that, hundreds, thousands of people. And sometimes they're just like, don't talk to me this month. I can't do anything. I'm working till midnight every day because we've got to deliver this thing. Yeah, I'm like, wow, gosh, yeah, I forgot that happens.
Thanks for that. Another question that's come through is that how can you have success in this field if you happen to be an introvert? So are there any suggestions for introverts out there?
Yes, lots. I feel like this is a big myth, but maybe I don't have the right to say that because maybe I'm not an introvert, but I do. I'm not sure actually, but I really do think it's a myth. Sometimes there's things that extroverts aren't good at, and I'm really talking about myself here, like with research and interviews. I know it's hard to put like what is an introvert into a box, but someone who's actually quiet and waits that extra few seconds and listens longer is better at that kind of work where it's really digesting and understanding and letting someone else speak, which is what a user interview, user research is all about. And I'm actually not as good at that because I'm like, oh yeah, you mean that? And then I've already lost the track that they were going on. So but you can also watch out for those things that you just don't like doing or feel comfortable with. Like maybe you're not the UX workshop facilitator in your team. Someone else does that. But there's definitely things that you'll just find yourself drawn to, but UX has so much in it that there's lots and lots of things that are great.
Yeah, agree. I think it's a myth.
Yeah.
Another question is, does UI, or I suppose this is kind of like lots of questions that we get at CareerFoundry is UX design or UI design a future-proof career? So do you think that UX can be automated in the future, or how relevant will it be in future tech when everything is automated potentially?
I feel like I have a good opinion on this one with regards to UI. This is a question a lot of people are asking. Because I think a lot of the design patterns are starting to settle when it comes to the internet. So it is maybe easier to do web design, which I think is becoming a bit commodified, right? Like there's lots of templates out there. UI design is not there, and it won't be as long as we have new screens and new devices and new things. But I think UX is probably the least likely job to ever be automated because there are so many changing inputs and outputs, and the barriers are often people, right? The people you work with, the stakeholders, those are the ones that you have to get on board. And I don't think that you could ever automate all of those things. I think people like to think a lot of things in design are automated, but like really you can knock the background off of things now with remove.bg. So that got automated because you used to do that in Photoshop, but that's like one very small thing. And people use these examples and like, motion design is so difficult, but people think you can just automate it. But like, you should see the things that these automation software create. They're not good yet. So I think we're not quite as far along with automation as we think. And I think UX has a really long way to go before it could be.
Yep. Totally agree as well. I think if you're thinking now, is it a good future decision for me to make to get into this field? I think now at least you definitely it's only still going up.
Maybe your kids. Maybe it's a conversation for your kids.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? We don't know the future, but
don't quote us on that though.
Yeah, but we're good. You're good right now. Yeah, you're going to be good for the next 20 years, I reckon.
We've got so many questions that have come in, but should we just change the format a little bit here, and should we just do some quick fire questions and really make it kind of like a game show now? Because I feel that we're never going to get through them all otherwise. But I think we'll just go for yes, no, maybe like a very, very quick, like, I don't know, like a 5-word answer or something. So the first question is, let's just go for this one. Can you work remotely as a UX designer?
Yes.
Will an online course get me a job?
Yes.
Yes. We're doing
having a background in architecture is good for UX design?
Yes, can be.
We've got a lot of yeses.
I mean, we had a UX designer at CareerFoundry who was in architecture, and she was great. So.
Yeah,
we did. I think we also had I think we had an article about that one too.
It's more than 5 words.
Sorry. Oh my god. The question master has been out-questioned. Okay. Do I have to be artistic to become a UI or UX designer? No. Do you see the UX career path going long term?
Well, I guess we just answered. Yeah. I hope so. Yes, definitely.
This question is maybe a little bit more interesting to answer a little bit longer, but I generally see lots of younger people working in the industry. What do you both think about older people working in UX design and UI design too? Is this any insights there?
I guess because it's a newish field, because tech is newish, that it's just natural. But what's old? What's old? It's like,
that's the thing. Yeah.
is 38 old?
I mean, I'm hoping we have good Wi-Fi and laptops. I can work in a wheelchair when I'm 90. So like,
yeah, I honestly think that it has really nothing to do with it at all. It's really probably just because the field is just like 10, 15 years old, and so everyone's like 25, 30 something, or getting a bit younger. Yeah,
it's tech. Yeah.
And also, I think, like as we were saying before, like the transferable skills and also that wealth of experience before, if you worked in different professional backgrounds, you're going to bring all that experience to UX design. So you're going to see things from different perspectives that maybe some younger members of the team won't see. So I think that's a super important point. Yeah. This isn't a yes/no question. How to find a remote job? Yes, no. Answer. How do you find a remote job?
Okay. Right. I thought that's what you said, and it's like, but you were making a joke. Okay. How do you find a remote job? Yes. Actually, I don't really. I think there are lots of them now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Don't use Fiverr. Don't sell yourself too cheaply.
Yeah, that's definitely a good
job. Yeah.
Yeah. That's these platforms where you just do the design and you just get paid $50 for. Yeah. Don't do that. I don't even know. I think there's probably filters and search things on LinkedIn and I honestly I think that's it, because how else do you do it? Like you can't. Oh, there's a job in Brazil. I'll go over to Brazil and see the jobs. So you just have to look online and use filters and searching. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also we've seen that some of the really big tech companies, but also small tech companies, have also moved to remote working during the pandemic. So like definitely it's also changing, and there are more remote positions out there now too. Gondi, I think you want to say something.
Good point. Really quick. Look at those companies. Look for the companies that you know are huge, like Facebook, Twitter, all of these tech companies that are all like 100% remote now. They have no one in their offices. So don't just search online, but do that. But also think of the companies and look for them, and then look at their jobs that they're posting. Done.
Awesome. And I think with that, I think we're going to slowly say goodbye. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dee, for taking. No, the show must continue. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us this evening. I think some of the insights were really great. Apologies if we didn't get through all the questions. Like I said, we did have an awful lot of questions, but there were some really, really good ones there, and I hope that we answered them as best that we could. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We love that. And if you have any questions about our UX design programs or UI design program, please book a call with the program advisor. A call is obviously your chance to talk about the program, but also about the kind of like the financing payment of it. And our program advisors will tell you about all the next steps. And so after this webinar, you'll be redirected to a page where you can book that call. And yeah, from us in Berlin, Dee, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. It's a shame we're not all together in the same room, because maybe we could have a coffee or something afterwards. But I think that's everything. So thank you so much for being here.
This is really fun. Thank you so much, Will. I've had a great time. And thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Thanks so much, everyone. Great questions.
Awesome.